Hello there everybody! Today I will be teaching you how to calibrate your Generation 5 Pokemon games so you can soon RNG manipulate to easily get your favorite shinies, perfect competitive Pokemon or a ton of rare items. This process is mandatory if you'd like to RNG manipulate anything in these games. I will be using my German copy of Pokemon White and my English copy of Pokemon Black 2 for this guide, but the process is exactly the same across all languages. The copy of White I'm going to calibrate on my Capture Card Nintendo 3DS console, and the copy of Black 2 on my Capture Card Nintendo DS console. The process is almost exactly the same no matter what model DS console you're using, however there is some small but important differences I'll explain later. This guide will likely only work for you if you have an original copy of a Gen 5 game, as ROMs played via Twilight Menu or NDS Forwarder and fake cartridges calculate these values we're trying to figure out in a different, largely unknown way, making it much more difficult or sometimes even impossible to calibrate, at least at this time. Here I would recommend to either buy a cheaper language game, such as a Japanese one, if you don't mind not being able to read the text in-game, or to use emulators on PC. The website PokemonRNG.com has useful guides for emulator RNG, as it is fairly different from retail RNG, aka RNG done on original hardware. Calibrating your game in this context just means finding out certain values that are tied to one specific game cartridge plus console combination. Meaning if you have, for example, one Pokemon White cartridge, one white 3DS console and one pink 3DS console, and then do calibration with your Pokemon White on your pink 3DS, you will only have found the calibration for the specific combo of your Pokemon White cartridge plus your pink 3DS. If you now try to RNG manipulate using this white cartridge on your white 3DS, you may not be able to, as the calibration can be different. But if you swap back to your pink 3DS afterwards, you will be able to RNG there again just fine. Should you have two cartridges of the exact same game version, like two white ones, the calibration for both on the same DS console should be the same, but I'd personally still do one calibration attempt to make sure it all matches. Doesn't take very long anyways. It is also not tied to your save file in any way, so you do not need to calibrate again if you ever delete your current save file and create a new one. These values we are looking for are called the V count, timer 0, V-frame and GX stat. Whenever you start the game from the home menu, these values, together with the current date and time your console is set to down to the second, your DS's MAC address, and any buttons you press and hold whilst the game is starting are what determines your initial seed. The initial seed is a 64-bit hexadecimal number, so a 16 digits long hex number, and it later determines everything random that happens in the game, such as which Pokemon you encounter when running through grass, what IVs they have, whether they are shiny or not, and many other things. So, to be able to predict this randomness accurately, we need to find these values. Whilst the V count, V-frame and GX stat always stay consistent throughout this calibration process, so you can only get one specific value for each of those, the timer 0 varies between a limited number of values. Which timer 0 you get exactly is random every time you start the game or soft reset. Though for RNG manipulation in Generation 5, we want to stay away from soft resetting for now, as the current RNG programs cannot account for that. How many different timer 0s you can get here depends on both the game you're playing and the console you're playing on. In Black and White 1, you can always get exactly two different numerically adjacent timer 0 values. If one of your timer 0s is 1110 for example, the other timer 0 you can get must either be 110F or 1111. The F can be here because these are hexadecimal numbers, just like the initial seed, meaning instead of counting from 0 to 9 and then going over to the next 10th, this system counts from 0 to 9 and then A to F. So there's 16 different values possible instead of only 10. Which of the other two timer 0 values it actually is, you may find out during this calibration process, but even if you don't, that's fine, as in that case it will be your less common timer 0 value, which you generally not want to use for RNG manipulation. Should both the timer 0s you find be evenly split in how often you get them, you can either just choose one at random to RNG with in the future, or input both of them into your RNG profile to use both for RNG manipulation, whichever you prefer. In Black and White 2 on the other hand, you can get more than just two timer 0s, making RNG there more inconsistent than it is in Black and White 1. but in exchange Black and White 2 have other advantages such as more varied encounters to choose from and much better methods for advancing large amounts of frames quickly. From my experience, I found that there's 3 different ways the timer 0 can be distributed for a given console plus cartridge combination. Option 1 is the standard distribution. Here you'll have between 6 to 8 timer 0s, 1 to 2 of which are a fair bit more common than the rest. This one is by far the most common and it is the only timer 0 distribution you can get if you're playing on a DS or DS Lite, though it is also most common on DSi and 3DS models. Option number 2 is the lucky distribution. With this one you'll only hit 1 or 2 specific timer 0s about 90% of the time, making getting the timer 0 you are aiming for almost as quick as it is in Black and White 1. This distribution can only exist on DSi and 3DS and is pretty rare. And finally option number 3, the unlucky distribution. This is by far the worst one as you can get between 10 to 20 or possibly even more different timer 0s, none of which are particularly more common than the rest. If this is the timer 0 distribution you got, RNG manipulation will be very annoying and honestly I wouldn't torture myself with that. If you have any other console than the one you got this unlucky distribution with, even if it is the exact same model, I still recommend to try calibration on that one as well, as there's a chance you'll get a standard or maybe even lucky timer 0 distribution there. One final thing to note in regards to these values is about the V count. Whilst I did say earlier that this value stays consistent throughout your calibration, this isn't always true. If you're playing on a DSi or 3DS model console, you may get 2 different V count values that are tied to some of your timer 0s. In my over 3 years of being in the Gen 5 RNG community, I've only seen this happen 4 times and only if the V count a person got was either AC or AD. In those cases they could also get the other V count of the 2 on some of their timer 0s. If this is the case for you, make sure to note down which timer 0 has which V count as well. This will generally not impact your ability to RNG manipulate, but it will make troubleshooting when something goes wrong more annoying later. This video will cover 3 different calibration methods. The first method, safe needle calibration, is the fastest method to calibrate a Black or White 1 game. The second method, Unova link needle calibration, is the by far fastest method to calibrate a Black 2 or White 2 game. And the third method, IV Calibration, is a plan B you can try if either of the first methods yielded no results for you. No matter which method you want to use though, you will need the programs Eon Timer by Das Ampharos and Poké Finder by Admiral Fish, which are both linked in the description below. In Eon Timer you'll want to set your calibration to -95 and target second to 20 if you're using a DS, DS Lite or DSi, or set the calibration to -424 and the target second to 40 if you're playing on any 3DS line model. These calibration numbers are not going to work perfectly for everyone, but I will explain how to adjust it for yourself later. The seconds with 20 and 40 I chose because they are high enough so that any console should have enough time for you to set the target time and get back to the home menu afterwards. You can change the target second to whatever you want basically, but these are the ones I would use specifically for calibration purposes. In Poké Finder you just go to the Gen 5 tools at the top and open the Profile Calibrator. In the right half you start by selecting the game version, language, console you play on, and add your console's MAC address, which can be found in the internet settings of your console. On DS and DS Lite you need to access it from within the games menu, and on DSi or 3DS models you can view it in your console's standard Wi-Fi settings. The MAC address can sometimes start with a few zeros, but Poké Finder can just ignore any zeros that are at the start. So a MAC address like my DS Lite's 0009BFC5E8C8 would just become 9BFC5E8C8, and a MAC address like my DSi's CC9E00717BAE would remain as it is, as zeros that are in between other numbers and letters have to be kept just as they are. Key presses you can ignore. The seconds minute max you should put to your target second ±5. So on DS, DS Lite and DSi the range should be 15 to 25, and on 3DS models it should be 35 to 45 if you went with my recommendations from earlier. The V count, timer 0, GX stat and VFrame you leave unchanged for now. The program will automatically change those based on what console you've selected. There's one issue here though, which is with the timer 0 range. The program has some default values in the minimum and maximum timer 0 fields, however at the time of making this video, if you're playing on a DSi or 3DS console and want to calibrate a black or white 2 game, this range isn't as wide as it needs to be. Instead of the range being 1600 to 1790, we'll change it to 1400 to 1900. Over the years I've been helping others calibrate their games, and sometimes for non-English language games, the timer 0 they get is outside the 1600 to 1790 range. Like I've seen Japanese games have a timer 0 in the 1400s and some German games have a timer 0 in the 1800s for example. But even if your game is English, I'd still expand the range just to be sure. If you're doing this on DS or DS Lite, you should not change the default range. Then at the bottom there is 2 checkboxes labeled Soft Reset and Memory Link. The Soft Reset checkbox we will not be using, so leave that unchecked. The Memory Link checkbox, however, you may need to check if you're calibrating a black or white 2 game and have connected a black or white 1 to the current save file using the Memory Link feature. This of course can only be the case on pre-existing save files, so if you just created a new one, you don't need to check off the box. But if it is indeed an older save file, you will want to check whether Memory Link has been activated or not by going to the Unova link menu, then to the Memory Link option, and there seeing if the option Memory List is there. If it's there, Memory Link is guaranteed active and you need to check off the box for it. But if it isn't there, that doesn't necessarily mean that Memory Link was not used yet. I tested this myself and you can already do Memory Link with a black or white 1 game that hasn't even received the starter yet, as long as the game has any save file present at all, even if it's got not even a minute of playtime. If Memory Link was used with such an early save file, there's no way I know of to tell it was used on the black or white 2 game side, as the Memory List option does not appear. So should you not find any valid seeming results during calibration of an older black or white 2 save file without the Memory Link checkbox checked off, try with it checked off. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get started with the first method in Save Needle Calibration. This method makes use of the little clock symbol that appears whenever you save your progress. It can be used in all Generation 5 games, though it is suboptimal for Black and White 2, as those games have a much faster method in the Unova link Needle Calibration we'll get to later. In-game you only need to have any save file. Whether you just started it 2 minutes ago or it's been on your cartridge since the game's release doesn't matter. You will also need to have saved in an area without anything that can advance the RNG, such as randomly moving NPCs or overworld weather. Your player character's homeroom would be a good place for this, as it's literally the first area you can access when starting a new save file, and it has nothing that can advance the RNG on its own. Also make sure to not have Tornadus or Thunderous currently roam through Unova if you're playing Black or White 1, as if your roamer is actively roaming, that will advance the RNG in a way the Pokéfinder calibration window cannot account for at the time of making this video. I have requested to the developers of Pokéfinder for a Roamer is Roaming button to be added to the profile calibrator, so if you're watching this a couple months from when I uploaded this video, perhaps the newest version of Pokéfinder does have such a button, in which case you're good to go and can use this method anyways. Without such a button, it would be fastest to just kill the Roamer real quick though. It'll respawn after you beat the champion again. Should you for some reason not be willing to kill or capture it, you'll have to use the IV Calibration method I'll explain later, as it is unaffected by the roamer and will allow you to successfully calibrate anyways. If you are far enough into the game to activate the roamer, so after the 7th gym at least, and are unsure whether your Tornadus or Thunderous is currently roaming, you can check a gate's electronic bulletin board for news about a storm. Make sure the Save Needle option is selected in Pokéfinder and choose a date and time that you wish to use for this. It really doesn't matter what date or time you choose, but I personally always just choose the current date, which is the 9th of March 2025 in my case, and I'll just take the middle of the day and 12 o'clock PM because I feel like it. Game version, language, DS type and MAC address I already set to what applies in my case. Eon timer is set to 40 seconds and the calibration to -424 as explained earlier, since I'm calibrating using my 3DS first. Now we can finally start our first calibration attempt. We set our date in the console to whatever we put into Pokéfinder, and then of course do the same with the time. However, as you confirm the time on your DS, at the same moment you start Eon Timer. Alright, then you want to return to the home menu as quickly as possible. On DSi and 3DS you can just return like this or via the power button if you'd like. And on DS and DS Lite you have to turn off the console and then turn it back on to be able to get back to the home menu. In just a moment, Eon Timer is going to start beeping 6 times, and on the 6th and final beep you want to start the game. And after starting the game you don't want to press any buttons, so hands away from your console if possible, and make sure to not press anything. And once this screen appears with the star at the top, you can start pressing buttons again. Then we get into the game. If you're far enough into the story to have received the C gear already, always turn it off. Alright. Because if it's on, then the results we'll get will be invalid. Alright, and now, let me real quick have a look. Is the mouse visible? Yes, alright. In the bottom screen's top right here, in a moment you will see a little save needle clock appearing. And in Poké Finder we have to note down that the clock's starting position. Let me do this once and just show you. Top right was our first needle. Alright, so on the profile calibrator we press the top right needle button. And again, this time we got top left. We want to do this about 8 times in a row to get an accurate result. Top right. Top. Just right, alright. Also just right. 2 to go. Bottom left. 1 final one. Top right. Alright, once you've done your 8, you can press the search button. And I immediately got a result. Alright. Now there's a couple things to watch out for here. If your result does not hit the second you were aiming for in Eon Timer, like I was aiming for 40 and this is 42, then you have to see how far away from your target it is. On DS and DS Lite, you would basically always hit your exact target second, sometimes 1 second off, incredibly rarely 2 seconds off. If you're more than 2 seconds off from your target second on DS and DS Lite, your result is most likely invalid. On DSi and 3DS, the starting time for DS games can be a bit more varying and take longer. So if you're like 1 or 2 seconds off, that would be normal. Like in my case, I was aiming for 40 and I hit 42. That's okay. But if you were 3 or 4 seconds off, that's already very, very unusual. So I'd be a bit suspicious there. And if you're more than 4 seconds off, like if I, let's say, had hit second 45, then that would probably be an invalid result as well. On another note, if you get more than 1 result here, then you'll want to just add another save needle at the top. So you just, in the game, save the game once more. This time right, add the needle and press search again. And then the results should be reduced. It may need like 2 or 3 more save needles before you are down to only 1 result. But that's okay, sometimes it just takes a bit longer, that's alright. If you get no results at all, or only get results that seem too far off, like let's say I was aiming for second 40 and hit second 45 according to the profile calibrator, then you want to double check all the values you have put into Poké Finder and Eon Timer. Check whether the date and time you have in Poké Finder match what you have on your DS, check whether the game version, language and DS type are correct, whether you maybe have any typos or missing some letters or numbers in the MAC address, check whether the second range is appropriate for what you have in Eon Timer as the target second. Make sure the calibration is set to the correct starting value that I recommended earlier, so minus 95 for DS, DS Lite and DSi, or minus 425 for 3DS models. And make sure that the memory link checkbox is checked off if it needs to be if you're playing Black and White 2. And if after all that you still don't get any valid seeming result, just try once again. Sometimes maybe you have done something wrong, accidentally pressed a button during startup or something. Just doing it again can definitely help there. And if you then still don't get anything, join Blizzy's RNG Help Discord server and ask for assistance in the Pokemon Black and White channel by providing an explanation of the issue and screenshots of your Pokefinder calibration window and Eon Timer. I've put a link to the Discord into the description below. Alright, now that we have found a result that seems valid, we want to write down our V count, timer 0 and V frame. The GX stat is always 6 if you're playing on original hardware with an original cartridge of the games. So our V count in this case is 8D, the V frame I got is 8, and the timer 0 I got is 1260. Alright, about the seconds, of course, in the future for RNG we would want to try and hit our exact target second. Right now it doesn't really matter, but when we're later going for, let's say, a shiny, if we don't hit our target second, then we don't hit our target seed and can't get our shiny. So put 42 in my case into second hit, however much you were off by. If you had hit 21 seconds when you were aiming for 20, put 21 in here. And after you put whatever second you hit in here, press the update button once. This now should change your calibration value, so that next time you hopefully hit your exact target second. Alright, now we want to repeat this process about 5 to 10 times if you're playing Black and White 1, 20 to 30 times if you're playing Black and White 2 on DS or DS Lite, and 30 to 40 times at least in Black and White 2 on DSi or 3DS models. Alright, let's get to the second attempt. Alright, our target date is of course still set, and with the target time I will not be resetting it to exactly 12 o'clock, but instead to 12 o'clock and 1 minute, because some date, time and key press combinations may heavily favor some timer zeros that you may usually not hit very much. So let's say at 12 o'clock on the 9th of March 2025 with no key presses, I got timer 0 1260. Maybe if I continue with 12 o'clock, I will get 1260 like 8 more times or something if I do this 10 times. And it's possible that in reality, if I change the date at all or the time, if I let's say do 1201, 1202, 1203, 1204, that I would barely ever hit 1260 as my timer 0 and would instead maybe hit 1261 most of the time. And to prevent such date, time and key press combinations that heavily favor one timer 0 from messing up your end result, I recommend to just, with each new attempt, change the time a little bit. I just change it 1 minute forward, because why not? Alright, let's start the second attempt. Alright, getting ready. Okay. Not pressing any buttons. Always gotta remember. Always gotta remember. Okay. C gear off. We can clear our results from last time and then get ready to input the next set of needles. Our first one is bottom right. Okay. our second one. Bottom left. Alright. Bottom left again. Top right. Bottom right. Just top. Bottom left. One more. And bottom right. Alright. And this time we hit exactly 40 seconds, which is perfect, just like we wanted. And we hit a different timer 0. 125F. Alright. Had you again missed your target second, you may want to update Eon timer again. Sometimes, especially on DSi and 3DS, I recommend to just write down which second you hit and not change anything yet. And then over the course of calibration, see what target second you or what second you hit most often, and then using that to calibrate your Eon timer. Because especially on 3DS consoles, it can just fluctuate a lot. So you may want to find a good average to go with. Alright, now I hit 125F once and 126 once. Like I said, on Black and White 1, I would now do this probably like 3 to 7 more times, 3 to 8 more times, sorry, to just get the most common timer 0 value. In Black and White 2, if you're playing on DS and DS Lite, do this 20 to 30 more times. On 3DS and DSi, 30 to 40 more times. Alright, then let's assume that after my 10 attempts it would look like this, that my timer 0, 125F I hit 3 times, and timer 0, 1260 I hit 7 times. Let's just assume that. So now I can, in the profile calibrator, right click into the result here at the bottom, then a little window will pop up, and you click create profile. Then this little window here will pop up, and as you can see, most values are already filled in, like the MAC address, vframe, vcount, and so on, from whatever you had in your calibration window. And the timer 0 minute max will just be whatever your latest result was. In my case, I know, or I assumed that 1260 is my most common timer 0, so I put 1260 in here, because for the best odds of our RNG succeeding, we want to aim for the most common timer 0 value. TID and SID, we don't know just yet. I'll just input 0 and 0. That's maybe a subject for a future video, but for now, we'll just leave these at 0. If you know your train ID and secret ID, of course, you can input them here, but yeah, not necessary. The profile name, we can just put in anything. I'll just name it White1 3DS so I know. And then you can accept, and you have created a profile. Alright, now one last thing. I would recommend you keep note of whatever your timer 0 splits here were, and just put this into a file somewhere so you know you have it. This is especially useful in Black and White 1 later for trying to figure out what seeds you may hit instead of the one that you were aiming for. Alright, and that was already the safe needle calibration. Secondly, we'll look into the Black and White 2 exclusive Unova needle calibration method. Similarly to the safe needle calibration method, the Unova needle method also makes use of the little clock symbol, but this time when you're trying to establish an infrared link between your current Black or White 2 game and another Black or White 2 game using Unova. You don't need to actually have another Black or White 2 game for this, as simply starting the search is all we need to do. In-game you only need to have a save file. Whether you just started it 2 minutes ago or it's been on your cartridge since the game's release doesn't matter. Where you're saved within the game also doesn't matter. Technically the Unova option is already there even if you don't have a save file, but if you try to calibrate with that, you will not get any valid results because Pokefinder cannot account for there not being a save file, as that will change the advances. Make sure the Unova option is selected in Pokefinder and choose a date and time that you wish to use for this. It really doesn't matter what date or time you choose, but I personally always just choose the current date, which is the 9th of March 2025 in my case. And I'll just take the middle of the day in 12 o'clock because I feel like it. Game version, language, DS type and MAC address I already set to what applies in my case, and Eon timer is set to 20 seconds with -95 calibration as explained earlier, since I'm calibrating my regular Nintendo DS this time. And with that we can start this next method's first calibration attempt. We set the date in the console to what we put into Poké Finder and do the same with the time. Then we confirm the time in our date and time settings at the same moment as we start Eon timer. And now we go back to the home menu as quickly as possible. Once Eon timer runs out, there will be 6 beeps, and on the 6th and final beep you press A to start the game, and don't press any buttons afterwards. 6, alright. Not pressing any buttons, that is important. Alright, once this screen appears with the star, you can continue pressing buttons. Then we navigate to Unova link, key system, send and receive keys, and now in the top screen's bottom right corner there will be a little clock symbol appearing in just a moment. We have to note down this clock's starting position in Poké Finder via the needles in the top left, the arrows. Alright, let's see what our first one is. Top left. Alright, so we note down top left. Number 2, bottom left. We note down bottom left. You can also let this search here. Let me show you. We have top. You can let this run for as long as you want. It really doesn't matter. I like to cancel it immediately because why not? But like I said, doesn't matter how long you let this run for. And left. Just as long as you can see the very starting position. We do this 8 times in a row to get an accurate result. Alright, one more. Alright, and then we press search. Alright, we got our first result. We hit 20 seconds and wanted to hit 20 seconds in Eon timer, which is perfect. If we had not hit 20 seconds, then we would have put whatever we hit instead into the second hit field down here. We can now note down our V count, timer 0 and V frame, as the GX stat will be 6 no matter what, as long as you're playing in an original DS console with an original DS game. V count is 82, V frame is 8 and the timer 0 we hit right now is 11:04. And we got this once. Alright. Should you get more than one result down here, you always can just add another needle, in my case top right, and press search again. Do this as long as it's necessary until you get only one result. Another thing you have to watch out for is the seconds you hit. On DS, DS Lite and DSi, if you hit 1 second off, that is always fine, though usually you should hit the exact target second. And if you're 2 seconds off, that's also still okay, though very rarely valid. If you hit 3 seconds or more off from your target, so if I aimed for 20 and let's say hit 23 here, then that would most likely be an invalid result. On 3DS models, it's a bit more lenient. The console itself is more inconsistent and can sometimes be 1 or 2 seconds off, that is normal. I'd say 3 or 4 seconds is a bit more extreme, but can happen as well, especially if your 3DS is hacked. And more than 4 seconds off with the calibration recommendations from earlier is very, very rare. I would even say impossible almost, so that would probably be an invalid result. If you should get no results at all, or only invalid seeming results, you will want to double check all the values you put into your profile calibrator window in Poké Finder. Check whether the date and time match what you have in your console, whether the MAC address is correct and doesn't have any typos or missing numbers or letters, the S type is correct, language is correct, game version is correct, second range matches what you put into Eon timer, and the correct type of needle here is selected if you're doing needle calibration, and whether memory link is checked off if you need it to be. After checking everything, you try again. And if you still don't get any valid seeming results, join Blissy's RNG Help Discord server and ask for assistance in the Pokemon Black and White channel by providing an explanation of the issue and screenshots of your Pokefinder calibration window and Eon timer. Alright, when you do get valid results like I got right here, you will want to write this down and do this at least 20 to 30 times if you're on DS or DS Lite, or 30 to 40 times at minimum on DSi or 3DS models. Alright, let's do our second attempt right now. We go back to the menu, of course, and change the time again. The date is already set. And here I have another recommendation, and that is to change the target time by just a little bit every single attempt. I personally will just put it a minute forward with every time, so I will now go for 12:01, next time I'll go for 12:02, then 12:03, and so on and so forth. This is because some date time and key press combinations may heavily favor one specific timer 0 that you may otherwise only get very rarely over others. So for example, I know at exactly 12 o'clock on the 9th of March 2025, with no key presses, I hit 11:04 right now. It's possible that if I continue to do this at the exact same time, in my 20 to 30 attempts get like 15 times 11:04. But what can happen is that if I now choose basically any other target time, 12:01, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that I will barely get any 11:04, and to prevent such daytime key press combinations that heavily favor a usually rarer timer 0 from messing up your results, I recommend to just always change the time a little bit so you're on the safe side. Alright, now let's do our next attempt. We could go back to the home menu and already clear out the needles we got last attempt in Pokefinder. Getting ready to start the game. Alright. Not pressing anything. Hands away from the DS. Just to be safe. Alright, and we can start pressing buttons again. Go to Unova link, key system, send and receive keys. And our first needle is bottom left. Alright. Our second needle is bottom. Alright. Third needle, top right. Fourth needle, top right again. Fifth needle left. Sixth needle, top right. 7 is top. And the 8th one is also top. And let's see. Now this is a good example. We hit 2 different results. Of course, from our previous result that we got, we can already tell that this one is the correct one. But just to show you how it works, I do another needle, top left, and then the invalid result disappears. Sometimes you may need to add 2 or 3 more, but this is fine. Alright, and then I note down I got this one 2 times in my timer zeros editor. You can of course choose whatever you want for this to write this down. Now, after the 20 to 30 times that you've done this, or 30 to 40 depending on what console you're on, the example timer 0 distribution may look like this, where you got 11:04 as your most common timer 0, whilst some of the others like 11:05 are a bit close, but 11:04 seems to fairly clearly be the most common one. Once you have found what your most common timer 0 is, you can right click into the generated result of any of the results that you got and press create profile. The right click little pop-up you can probably not see, but once you right click in there you'll see it. Profile, and then a little window will pop up. Alright, and here it is. The profile name, you can just name whatever you want. I'll name it Black 2 English on my DS Fat. All the values are generally correct, and then your timer 0, min and max, you will generally want to put to the exact same value, which is whichever timer 0 was most common for you. In my case, I know 11:04 was the most common timer 0, and this is already in here, so I can leave it at that. I also need to check off the memory link checkbox, because I've done memory link on my Black 2 game, and if you have the shiny charm in Black, of course this applies to Black and White 2 only, If you have the shiny charm in black and white too, you also want to check this off. I don't have it in this black too, so I don't check it off. TID SID, I'm just gonna put to 0 for now. TID SID RNG is a subject for a future video. Only matters for shiny RNG anyways. If you just want to RNG for IVs or rare items, this doesn't matter. Then you click accept and it's saved now, and a window opened up again that I didn't want to. Another thing I would recommend is for you to keep how often you got each timer 0 written down somewhere, because this will be helpful later for troubleshooting if you cannot seem to hit your target seed when doing any RNG at all. At last I'll explain the IV calibration, which can be used in all Generation 5 Pokemon games, but is slower than the other two methods and requires you to calculate the IVs of a caught wild Pokemon. So, to be able to calculate the IVs remotely precisely, you'd either need to train up a lower level Pokemon whilst noting down any EVs it got during battle, be far enough into the game to encounter very high level Pokemon, or have a lot of rare candies. You will also need either a Pokemon with the move Sweet Scent, or at least one honey item so you can summon a wild Pokemon without moving your character, as that has a chance to change the IVs in a way Pokefinder's calibration window cannot account for. I'll be doing this in the dark grass on Route 1 in my copy of Pokemon Black 2, as the wild Pokemon are at basically the highest level in this entire game here, making IV calculation easier. If you're playing Black or White 1, I recommend to instead do this in the dark grass of Giant Chasm's Crater. In Pokefinder, switch to the IV search tab if you aren't there already. Then, as with the other methods, choose the date and time you wish to use for this. It really doesn't matter what date or time you choose, but I personally always just choose the current date, which is the 9th of March 2025 in my case, and I'll just take the middle of the day in 12 o'clock PM because I feel like it. Game version, language, DS type and MAC address I have already set to what applies in my case, and Eon timer is set to 20 seconds with -95 calibration as explained earlier, since I'm calibrating my regular Nintendo DS again. Let's get started with the final method's first calibration attempt now. You put the date in your console to whatever you put into Pokefinder, and of course do the same with the time. At the same moment as you confirm the time in your console settings, you start Eon Timer. Then you go back to the home menu as quickly as possible and get ready to start the game. Eon Timer will by default beep 6 times, and on the 6th beep you start the game, and do not press any buttons after you have started the game. Alright, started. Not pressing anything, having the hands away from the DS, because if you do, that will possibly add a key press and screw with the results. Alright, once that screen appears with the star on the top, you can start pressing buttons again. Then go into your game, turn off the C gear. That's very important, always turn it off. And at your leisure, whenever you feel like it, you can use honey or sweet scent to summon a wild Pokemon. Make sure to not enable the C gear and not take any steps with your character in the game, as that can also screw with the results. Alright, I'm just gonna sweet scent and we'll see what we get. In Pokefinder, you can press on the IV calculator button already if you'd like, and that will open up, would have guessed, an IV calculator. Now here I got a double battle, but that is fine. You always, if you get a double battle, which is only possible if you're doing this in dark grass, want to kill the Pokemon on the left and then catch the Pokemon on the right. Alright, didn't really matter to put it to sleep, I use a Master Ball anyways, because that's fastest. In the meantime, I already set the IV calculator to black and white 2 and Watchog, and I can already see that it's gonna be level 64. Everything else we'll have to see in just a moment. No nickname, thank you very much. Alright. Serious nature. And alert to sounds. Okay. HP is 164, attack is 114, defense 99, special attack 85, special defense 106, and speed 123. Then you press find IVs, And as you can see, it's not exactly precise right now, but that's okay for the moment. The profile calibrator window will already have taken the IVs, the calculator calculated into account, and you can press search. I only got one result, which is perfect. Should you have gotten more than one result, you may need to level this Pokemon up that you caught via a rare candy, press add row, add the next level, add its stats, and press find IVs again. Then you can look again if the IVs got more precise, press search again in your profile calibrator. If there's still more than one result, continue on adding levels until it is at exact precise IVs or you got a result before that. Now you want to note down any valid seeming results, V count, V frame, and timer 0. This seems pretty good, so I will note down our V count is 82, not 83, 82, our V frame is 8, and the timer 0 we hit is 11:05. To know whether a result is valid or not, you basically want to look mostly at the seconds for now. On DS, DS Lite and DSi, you would usually hit your exact target seconds and can sometimes hit a second off. In very rare instances, 2 seconds off is also possible, but anything more than that is most likely invalid. So if I hit 21 or 22 seconds, that would be alright, because I'm on DS Lite. If I hit 23, 24, 17, anything like that, that would most likely be an invalid result, and what you do then I'll explain in just a moment. If you're on 3DS, however, and you let's say aim for 40 seconds as per my recommendation, then being 1 to 2 seconds off is very normal. The 3DS takes longer to boot games at inconsistent amounts of time, and you could possibly even be 3 or 4 seconds off sometimes, though that would already be suspicious. And if you seemingly are more than 4 seconds off, so let's say 5 seconds, I was aiming for 40 and I hit 35 instead, that would most likely be an invalid result. If all results that you get seem to be invalid, then you want to check all the values you have in the profile calibrator window again. Double check that you at first put all the stats of the Pokemon you caught incorrectly. If you already leveled it up and there may have been a mistake you made earlier on, simply remove all rows but one and put all the level and all the stats to whatever is on screen right now. Then you want to double check all the date and time are correct and what you set it to in your console as well. You want to check whether the MAC address is correct, is missing any letters or any numbers, if any typos, anything. The S type is correct, language, game version, second range, fits what you put into your timer, and memory link is checked off if you need it to be checked off. After checking everything, you try again. And if you still don't get any valid seeming results, join Blissey's RNG Help Discord server and ask for assistance in the Pokemon Black and White channel by providing an explanation of the issue and screenshots of your Pokefinder calibration window and Eon timer. I've put a link to it into the description. Alright, so to find what timer 0 value you most commonly get, you will want to do this 5 to 10 times if you're on Black and White 1, no matter what console, 20 to 30 times if you're on Black and White 2 on a DS or DS Lite, and 30 to 40 times at minimum in Black and White 2 on DSi or 3DS models. Let's get to our second attempt now. Going back to the menu, of course, the date is still set. Here is another thing I recommend you change. Is the target time. I like to vary it by a little bit. In this example, I'll just set it forward by 1 minute. And next attempt, I would set it forward by yet another minute, after that yet another minute, and so on and so forth. And this is because certain date, time, and key press combinations can heavily favor some timer zeros you may usually get very rarely. In this example, on the 9th of March 2025 at 12 o'clock with no key presses, it's possible that I mostly will get 11:05 as my timer 0, whilst usually if I had to pick any other target time, 12:01, 12:02, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth, I may get 11:04 almost never. And to prevent such specific times heavily favoring rarer timer 0 from messing with your final calibration results, I recommend to just always change the minute forward by 1 or anything about the time. It doesn't really matter. You can change the minute, you can change the date, you can change the second you aim for, it doesn't matter. Just make sure whatever you put into Poké Finder, whatever changes you put in there, matches your Eon timer and your DS console. Alright, let's start with the second attempt now, 12:01. Oh, I just noticed the IV calc was still up. Of course, I noted down the V frame, V count, and timer 0 we got last attempt. Alright. Not pressing any buttons now. Don't want to accidentally mess up this attempt. Just to not waste any time. Alright, started pressing buttons again once I saw the star on the top screen. Turning off the C gear, of course. And then, to not waste any time, I'll just sweet send as soon as I'm able to. And let's see what we get. Put the IV calc on screen again. Warthog again. This time level 66. Alright, Master Ball, because that is by far the fastest. No thank you, no nickname. Lonely and loves to eat. Loves to eat. Lonely. One more thing. If you cannot find the characteristic in this drop-down menu, at the time of making this video, the characteristics in Poké Finder are already adjusted to how they are in modern gens. A few of the characteristics were changed, I think in Gen 6 it was. So if you can't find it, you may want to look it up on Bulbapedia. I'll probably also put the table on the screen right now, just so you can see which new characteristic that would be in the drop-down menu that opens up when you click here, that you can't see right now, but trust me, there's a drop-down menu. Which of those fits to the one that you can see on your DS screen. Alright. Only loves to eat. Now the HP 175, 143, 99, 91, 104, 118. Find IVs. Alright, and let's see what the calibrator says we got. Alright, we hit the second again. Calibration seems to be quite good. V count, V frame of course remain the same as it should usually be. And we got a different timer 0. We got 1105 once. And we got 1104 once. Alright, now like I said, you want to do this 5 to 10 times in Black and White 1, 20 to 30 times in Black and White 2 on DS or DS Lite, and 30 to 40 times at minimum on DS or 3DS models. An example timer 0 distribution that you get in the end might look like this. Here, of course, 1104 would be our most common timer 0. Once you have found your most common timer 0, you want to create a profile. You can do this by, for example, right-clicking anywhere until your generated result, a little mini menu will pop up and you press Create Profile. Once you do that, there will be, not this, a little pop-up here. And let me just move this real quick. Into this pop-up you can just first put a name. In this case I'll say B2 English Fat, because it's Black 2 on my English Fat DS. And all the values are already set. V count, GX stat, V frame, all from the one result that we got just now. Timer 0, minute max, you'll want to put to whatever your most common timer 0 value is. In my example, 1104 is the most common one, so I put this to 1104. You also want to check off the memory link checkbox if you're on Black and White 2 and you have memory link done, and the shiny charm checkbox if you are on Black and White 2 and have the shiny charm. TID, SID, I'll just put to 0 for now. That is the subject for a future video and only matters if you want to RNG a shiny anyways. If you want to RNG for IVs, or want to RNG hidden grotto Pokemon, or just items via pickup, doesn't matter, you can put anything in here and it will be just fine. Only for shininess you have to have accurate IDs. And finally, you'll also want to keep note of all the timer zeros you got during calibration and just save the note somewhere so you can access it again if you need it in the future. This will be especially important in Black and White 2 for troubleshooting should you ever not be able to get your target even after several attempts. So keep it somewhere to be on the safe side. And that was the IV calibration method. And with that we are done! Now you are ready to start RNG manipulating in Generation 5. Should I be made aware of any mistakes I made in this video or details I left out, I will write those into the description and make a pinned comment about it, so have a quick look into the comments if something doesn't seem to be working as advertised. If you are unsure where to start, I highly recommend watching some of Blizzy's team building videos, as they are both highly entertaining and very informative. I've linked Blizzy's team building videos playlist and both my and Blizzy's Gen 5 RNG playlists in the description below. Should you have any questions, Blizzy also has a Discord server for assistance with RNG manipulation, in which I'm fairly active in, at least at the time of making this video. I'll put a link to it into the description. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.